Hey, hey, whoever that was. It's Michael Phelon, my husband. Welcome, and thank you for being here. I've spent my entire life really in love with words. I've spent my entire career really working on words and helping people pick the right words for the right moment. I've always felt like people who could do that, pick the right word for the right context in the right moment, they're like magicians. They're prophets. They're presidents. They're poets. They're the most powerful people we know. That's how powerful words are. And I have always had that. Even when I was a young girl, I loved everything about language arts and reading, any word puzzle, any basic fill in the blank, anything that was about words in context was something that always motivated me. I also really loved personal storytelling, and I also was pretty good at public speaking, even as a kid. I just didn't always know exactly about the right order and the right time to say things. I had the gift of gab, but not much discernment at that point. I actually remember my very first report card. Back in those days, they would put your grades on this white piece of cardstock, and they would fold it in half and put it in a manila envelope, and they would trust you to walk it home to your parents, to have them sign it, and then you bring it back. I remember that first grade report card for a very specific reason. I was terrified on that walk home because I knew that I'd gotten all A's in all of my core subjects, but there was a big fat C on that report card. I'm actually still nervous talking about it. The C was for conduct. And I, even in first grade, knew exactly what the teacher's note next to that C said. And it said, Keisha talks too much. So I, petrified, walked home all the way down Gift Avenue, gave that report card, trembling to my mom. And she looked at that report card. She saw all those A's. She was incredibly proud. She didn't even see the C. She didn't comment on it. And I think that's because she already knew, right? She knew. I am a talker, always have been, always will be, and that wasn't something that she was going to punish me for. So that's always been a part of who I am, even as a child. I didn't always know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't. But I did know that the through line and the things that I was interested in was the ability to communicate well. And so I thought about being a public official. I thought about being a lawyer. I thought about being a minister. But instead, I chose to focus on what really was the through line, and that was communication. Communication that moves people to action, communication that moves people to sometimes just clarity for the moment. So I didn't become a lawyer, minister, or politician. I became a communication strategist, and I have spent my entire life really helping people to tell their own stories, helping them to shape their narratives, to help them lead, helping them to shape narratives that sometimes help them win. And that's really ironic. I've spent my entire life helping people do storytelling. It's what I do. And yet, I truly have always struggled my entire life to tell my own. And that is a bit ironic for someone like me, but let me just tell you that part of it is just the nature of my work. I'm a strategist. I'm behind the scenes, right? I'm not usually the subject. I'm not usually the point of the story. So that is kind of a professional kind of deference that I provided for myself. The other reason is really much more personal for me. As a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, I spent years learning how to lock up my story, to keep my story safe, to keep myself safe, and trying to unlearn that has been my entire life's journey. It's never been about the talking. We've already established I can do that. I've always done that, to my detriment. But it is the idea of centering my own personal story that has always terrified me. So let me tell you about my journey of anxiety getting ready for tonight. So when CAC contacted me, I immediately knew I was going to do this. I was all in, yes, the moment Kim reached out, because I believe in CACI and what they do for kids that were like me, and that's important. But I also thought I was saying yes to something different. I thought this was a panel discussion. I thought this was going to be like a panel of ladies sipping cocktails and being cute and clever, and they said there was a moderator. So I'm thinking like it's going to be like The View, right? It's going to be like Q&A, and I can just be clever and cute, and then we're done, and then we've raised money, and that's great. And then someone said, no, it's a monologue. Okay, so that is when the like low-level anxiety hum started, right? Monologue, because that's very, very different. And so I thought, okay, that can't be right. No, it's a panel discussion. They said Julie Staley was going to be the moderator. That can't be right. Because I already said yes, also. And so I happened to be at an event. Oh, it was actually at Liz's house, and I knew she was also doing this. And I just kind of snooped around a little bit for more detail about what tonight was, and I didn't get the answers I wanted. Someone said, yeah, no, it's a monologue. It's gonna be great, you're gonna be great. It's like the vagina monologues. Also, no, I'm out, right? Like, it's not worth it. I can write a check to CACI, right? That's all I need to do, right? I'm not getting up and talking about that. So it didn't take long for me to get clarity about what the purpose was tonight, but I will tell you, it was no less terrifying for me, and it's terrifying for all of us. It's terrifying for all of us for very, very different reasons. And I just want to say that, one of the things that you need to know about me is it's not the talking, it's the centering of the story. So I am standing in my truth and getting over my anxiety by being here with you today and sharing this. For survivors of abuse, which statistics say, by the way, is 1 in 4 of us in this room. I think it's actually higher. And we're not talking about men, by the way, with that statistic usually. I think it's much higher. For survivors, this is a well-founded fear, storytelling. There are deep and really complex reasons why personal storytelling, even if it's not directly related to your trauma, can be really, really difficult for some of us. Here's just a few. The first is difficulty with trust and vulnerability. Often, abuse shatters your ability to trust. It makes personal storytelling really hard. It makes opening up really hard. And these are things that we've had to learn to protect ourselves and to keep ourselves shielded. And so sometimes vulnerability feels unsafe. In fact, sometimes vulnerability is unsafe. And so we really live in kind of protected zones to make sure that we continue to operate in safety. A second is fear of being dismissed or invalidated. Survivors, many of them aren't believed. And for some of them that are believed, their stories are minimized or ignored, or there's no accountability and there's no follow-through. And so it makes it really feel like it's not worth sharing, right? The third is fear of judgment and shame. Even when stories aren't directly about the abuse, understand that lots of abuse victims really deal with shame on a regular basis and on a regular part of their life. Society has statistically and normalized stigmatizing people who are suffering from abuse, and we know that. And we're incredibly nervous about the ways that we are perceived because of the ways that society has stigmatized people who have gone through abuse. All of these are true for me. I've navigated every single one of these, but what's really capturing my imagination now, what's really settling in on me now, is how trauma has this impact. Trauma has this ability to have a ripple effect on all of my storytelling, even the stories that are not about my trauma. See, choosing to lock away parts of my story affects my ability to show up fully in the world. It's like trying to write a book, but redacting whole chapters. You cannot selectively lock away one part without changing how the rest unfolds. It's like what Brené Brown says about emotions. You cannot selectively numb your emotions. You want to numb what's painful, but you cannot do that without also numbing what is joyful. I think personal storytelling can be very much the same. I want to get over this anxiety. I'm trying to get over this anxiety. I'm trying to do it right now. And it's been my life's journey. But I want to tell you one thing that's making it easier for me tonight, one thing that's made it easier for me in the last several years. And that is the understanding that I'm writing a story, I'm sharing a story, not for me, but for my kids. While preparing for tonight, I remembered the wisdom of a dear friend of mine. She wrote her own story and biography, and she met with me, and she's like, I just have a sense that you're supposed to do this. No, I'm not. And she said, no, you need to do this. And I asked why, and she said, you do it for your kids. They see a part of you now, and that might be all they're interested in, but at some point, they're really going to have this desire to see the whole picture of who their mom is. And that changed the calculation for me, right? It wasn't about holding back to protect myself. It's about making sure I show up for my kids in the most full way. So while preparing for tonight, I remembered that wisdom, and I decided that I wanted to speak with my kids. So I talked to both of them. They're both here. And I talked to my son, and, I said, I want to share these hard things. How do you feel about it? Is there anything you want me to keep in mind? And he said, it's your story. Just share what you want to share. But can I read it first? And then I talked to my daughter, and I had a slightly different conversation with her because I was trying to get out of talking about the thing I'm talking about today. I gave her some options of other things that I could talk about, and I put this one last. I said, one of the options is talking about how hard it is to share my story as a survivor. And she said, Mom, you have to talk about that one. And she said that with perfect confidence and perfect clarity. You see, my kids are living my life with me. They're sharing my life with me. And, that has been what is driving me to be able to do this tonight. It's taken 40 years and a lot of healing and a lot of therapy and a lot of trauma-informed support to get me where I am today, to understand who I am today. But something about preparing for tonight, something about talking to my kids about it, caused something to settle really deep inside of me. Something that I think I've always known, but I really need to understand it for this season of my life. And that is really simple. It's a truth that I just want to say a couple of times. And that is that my trauma is not my story. Spending all of this time trying to lock away parts of who I am really diminishes who I am. My trauma isn't my story. My kids know me. They see me. They know the story that I'm writing. They're living it with me. They're sharing it with me. And while they may be touched by my trauma responses and my reactions, I pray that they are so much more impacted by my healing, by my resilience, by my strength, and by the healing that I've been willing to walk out in front of them. Here's a simple truth. The tough chapters don't tell the whole story. So I won't let them fully define me. You see, I'll say it again. My trauma is not my story, and your trauma is not your story. I no longer have to let the hard chapters define who I am or who I become. I don't have to let anxiety of personal storytelling prevent me from showing up in honest and authentic ways. So for those of you who know me and are hearing this part of my story for the first time, yes, I am a victim of childhood sexual abuse, but it's not my whole story. My life with my husband and my kids, my empathy, my faith, my open-heartedness, that's my story. That's the life that I'm writing, and that's the life that I want to share. And that truth, that confidence is what I'm using to reframe storytelling for myself, for my children, and for anyone here who's learning how to speak up and tell your own story in your own terms. Thank you.